A big spike in home prices reported in April. The Case-Shiller index pointing to a gain of more than 14% in the month. Phoenix, San Diego, and Seattle among the cities with the highest year-on-year gains, up more than 20% from the previous year. Let's bring in Danielle Hale, Realtor.com's chief economist. Danielle, this feels like this is kind of the same story we've heard over and over, but are we starting to see some relief on the other side? In other words, while we're continuing to see the spike, is that starting to slow in terms of the gains we're seeing?
Yeah, so not according to the Case-Shiller data that was out today, which, as you mentioned, showed a record increase in home prices up nearly 15%. But that data is based on home sales and home sales that were closed in April, which means it's a bit of a lagging indicator. If we look further ahead at more recent sales data, for example, from the National Association of Realtors or our listing data, what we see is that price trends in our listing data are starting to moderate. In April, we saw between 17 and 18% listing price growth from a year ago, but we've seen that pace slow a little bit in May, down to 15%. And then in our weekly data, which comes out more frequently, we're now down to 12% increases in the most recent week. So I realize that calling 12% price increases a shift in a buyer-friendly direction might ring a little bit hollow to some buyers. Prices are still up on a double-digit pace, but it's certainly a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I guess they take any chance or any gleam of hope here, as we've seen 10 consecutive months of double-digit listing price growth, and then the Case-Shiller number. That was the largest they've seen in 30 years, going all the way back when you look at that data. So it might be a lagging indicator. There might be some hope out there. But when you look on kind of a metro basis, as Akiko was kind of pointing out some of the hot ones, what about this continued discussion around moving away from cities in the pandemic, but potentially also seeing some growth in the metro areas? What are you seeing when you look at the listings now?
Yeah, so if you look at the data, the West is a really hot area, particularly the Mountain West, areas like Phoenix and Las Vegas and Denver. They're relatively affordable. They have solid tech industries. So workers who have the ability to work remotely are taking advantage of that flexibility. And we're seeing price increases there and fewer than half as many homes for sale this year compared to a year ago. So those are driving high price increases as those areas really struggle to ramp up building to accommodate all the new households that want to live there.
What do you think is the catalyst that we should be looking for that you think could reverse things a bit more? I mean, I feel like we've been talking about this for years, but whether it's the materials side or the supply side, I mean, what are some things that you think could potentially slow things down?
So I think actually seeing some improvement in new construction. We've had a bit of some improvement. We have a huge hole to dig out of, and so we're going to need steady, consistent housing starts over the million figure. We've seen that for the past couple months, but as the economy reopens, we've also seen builders run into some challenges. So I think we're making progress, but it's been a very slow, steady progress. We've also got a very large number of young households that are at prime ages where they are settling down, forming households, buying a home of their own. And so that's going to be really steady demand for the housing market for the foreseeable future for the next few years. We've also got record low mortgage rates. We do expect those mortgage rates to tick up. And in fact, one of the reasons I think we really saw prices surge in April is after a bit of an uptick in March, mortgage rates dropped in April, and they're still down right around 3% where they had been before that surge in the February-March timeframe. I think that's certainly going to help, for people who are out in the market and trying to find the home that's right for them. The lower mortgage rate really helps stretch their monthly payment so that they can afford those higher home prices that they're facing.
Yeah, that'll help. But there is, of course, another pain point out there if you're talking to buyers. And I will give the example of a house that's on my street here in Dallas that had the coming up sale sign. I don't think it ever had a for sale sign immediately after it went into contract. So it was basically about to be listed and then immediately kind of taken off the market there. And we've seen homes selling very fast in your data, much faster than last year and the year before. I mean, are you seeing anything let up there and maybe how quickly buyers have to move to secure one of these deals?
Yeah, you really need to be prepared as a buyer because we are seeing homes sell at a record pace, more than a month faster than this time last year. Now, at this time last year, we were sort of coming out of lockdowns, and so the housing market was a bit more sluggish than we typically see it at this time of year. But that is not the case this year. housing is moving at a record pace. We do usually see in late June, moving into July, the housing market start to slow. So the time on market tends to grow because buyers aren't acting with the same frenzy. They may be taking some summer vacations. And so housing might not be the number one top point of mind for them. So that's something that we're looking for in the data ahead. We did again see a slight drop in the improvement in time on market. So homes aren't selling that much faster relative to a year ago. So that's, again, another very small step in a buyer-friendly direction. But it's like you're taking your foot off of the gas slightly, but the housing market is still very much in the fast lane.
Danielle, we had a guest on last week that looked at rentals that were coming back in the city. And part of the reason they pointed to those returning to the city was because those who spent the pandemic in the suburbs hoping to buy a home ultimately realized they couldn't buy one. And I wonder if you're seeing that too. How many people are actually looking now? Have you seen a lot of people sort of just walk away because prices are so high?
The data hasn't really shown that yet, but I think the months ahead are going to be really interesting. We have consistently for the last month or two seen sellers increase. So more new sellers coming to market this year compared to last year. They're a little bit late seasonally. Typically, we see the biggest number of sellers in say April or May, but we're now looking at the weekly data in June. And seeing those sellers continue to increase. So what we may see is that buyers who tend to look early in the year and then get fatigued, or maybe they can't find what they're looking for and have to lock in a lease for next year, might have given up already at the same time that sellers are really starting to ramp up. That could help shift the competitive dynamics and make it a little bit less of a frenzied seller's market, give buyers a little bit less competition, a little bit more breathing room in a market that's still in many ways kind of stacked against them. It's very hectic for a buyer in today's market.
It is indeed. Danielle Hale, Realtor.com's chief economist. It's good to talk to you today.